Submitted for your approval, Craig Beam, a 40-something-year-old man-child. In some respects, your typical Pacific Northwest inhabitant, that breed of male who prefers t-shirts to neckties, drinks too much beer, and perpetually sports facial hair regardless of the current trends. But he's also got one foot planted firmly in the global phenomenon known as nerddom. He possesses an unassailable fondness for action figures, funny t-shirts, and cute internet memes. And somewhere in the gray, misty region between those two disparate aspects of his personality, he possesses a single-minded and passionate preoccupation. He's obsessed with, of all things, the Twilight Zone. And much to the chagrin of his long-suffering family, he can't shut up about it. And starting this fall, he's going to make you suffer too. Is it a podcast or a cheesy morning radio show? Or some ungodly hybrid of the two? Find out for yourself on September 1st, 2016, when Between Light and Shadow, a Twilight Zone podcast, officially thrusts its awkward and ungainly self upon the world. You'll find it in all the usual podcast places, whether you want to or not. God help us all.
You talking to me? You talking to me? You talking to me? Well, who the hell else are you talking? You talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here. Who the f*** do you think you're talking to?
Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?
Famed is thy beauty, Majesty, but hold, a lovely maid I see. Alas, she is more fair than thee.
FBI. FBI.
You looking at me? There ain't nobody else here. You must be looking at me. You want a piece of this?
Honey, come on over here, sugar buns. This machine just called me an asshole.
This is Bronwyn Knox, and you are listening to That Twilighty Show About That Zone. Tonight we're going to talk about the second season episodes Nervous Man in a $4 Room, another episode with a number in its title, and A Thing About Machines.
welcome to the show. We just had like a nice, interesting chat of basically just bickering, married couple bickering kind of stuff about how to read intros and such. But first I wanted to start off, we have...
All married couples argue about that.
I forgot to mention, this is my wife, Bronwyn, of nearly 16 years, but I wrote that here. Let me try that again. This week has been a very difficult one for the television world. We started off with the death of Ken Howard, a great character actor, never really became like a big thing. He was on TV. He was on a show that I watched for 2 years religiously called White Shadow, where he was the coach of a basketball team with Timothy Van Patten.
I remember the commercials. I never watched the show myself. Weren't we a little too young? Isn't that a little before our time?
Well, it played on reruns a lot, and somebody famous created that show. Oh, Bruce Paltrow created that show. He's the father of Gwyneth Paltrow.
Okay, gotcha.
And then later he appeared on Crossing Jordan, and he's been in a few things. You watched Crossing Jordan.
Right, Ken Howard appeared on Crossing Jordan. He was her dad, yeah.
And then after that, we lost Earl Hamner Jr., who is a very famous writer who created The Waltons, but he created the source material first. It was a book called Spencer's Mountain that he then adapted for in a screenplay with Henry Fonda, and then that later became The Waltons, and he created that. But he wrote several favorite Twilight Zone episodes of favorites of mine. None that we're reviewing tonight, though, but I just thought we'd just put it out there. He wrote...
Sure.
What did he write that I really liked? He wrote The Hunt, and he wrote A Piano in the House, and he wrote Jess Bell, and he wrote The Bewitching Pool, which are some of my favorites. And then finally we lost Gary Shandling, who doesn't really have a connection to the Twilight Zone per se. He did appear in a very bizarre episode of The X-Files that was directed by David Duchovny called Hollywood A.D., where he played basically, I guess, a Hollywood analog of Fox Mulder.
Yes, I remember that. He's a very funny guy. I remember fondly watching the Gary Shandling show.
Yeah, it's Gary Shandling's show.
It's Gary Shandling's show, yeah.
And then it became the Gary Shandling show, I guess, later on in syndication or something. And also the Larry Sanders Show, but I was more a fan of the first one than the second one.
Pete, you gotta go now. It's only a half-hour show. For the sake of time, why don't we say, I've already called Santa Barbara, I've made the reservations for you, you call Jackie, she's all excited, she's on her way over now to tell you how excited she is about the trip, and here she is now. Sometimes I feel like Rod Serling.
Whenever the Larry Sanders Show was on, apparently I was busy doing something other than watching TV, but it was big. It was much more popular.
Yeah, it was considered groundbreaking for its time. Yeah. It's enormously influential on a lot of comedy being done today on television. Okay, so... now that we got that unpleasantness out of the way, it is good to be back. This is...
he does have a Monkees connection. Did you know that?
No, I did not. No, I did not. We have a resident Monkees expert here.
I know this has nothing to do with Twilight Zone, but he was on a segment of Television Parts, apparently.
Elephant Parts?
No, Television Parts. Television Parts was a very short-lived TV show that...
Was it a Nesmith thing? Mm-hmm. And it was produced by him and all that?
Right.
And he was in it? Was
Gary Shandling
this like back when he was like an unknown?
It was before the Gary Shandling's show, so to me, would have been unknown at the time.
We had a little bit of a hiatus. I did try to record an episode with Andrew last weekend. It didn't go so well because the quality, I guess, of wherever he was sitting, he's kind of like, he's taking care of his mother right now because she had some surgery. But wherever he was, the Skype really wasn't working, and he couldn't hear me, and he couldn't hear me half the time. So we're redoing that episode. But this is the first time we are back here after a bit of a hiatus, about a month and a half. All of this is recorded basically out of sequence. An example of this is the episode you heard last week, which it was King 9 and The Man in the Bottle with Mark Giacomo, but it was recorded a couple of months before, on January 5th, as a matter of fact, because I figured I had Mark for 2 early episodes, and When the Sky Was Opened and What You Need, so I retained him for the second one. But we're back now with my beautiful wife of nearly 16 years. It'll be 16 years in 2 weeks, right?
Right.
Bronwyn Knox, how are you tonight?
I'm all right. How are you?
I really feel like a DJ now because I'm working on this brand new mixer that I have, and I'm recording it in stereo just for fun. So I really do feel like, and also for some reason my voice is coming out really deep. I mean, I sound like Adam Curry. I sound like Howard Stern. I always wanted a great radio voice. So have you, have you been listening to the show? Any answer other than a resounding yes would be embarrassing?
Yes, of course. I've been faithfully listening to the show.
Define faithfully? No. So, this is a pretty simple setup, and I believe it is equivalent to what Star Trek producers would call a bottle show. You have one location and two actors. Minimalist set decoration, so you obviously have a budget-minded episode in Nervous Man in a $4 room. And again, we have a portrait of a man going nuts. In this case, it's Jackie Rose. It's like this 2-bit wannabe gangster who needs a job. He's desperate for some action.
Right, it's like a play. He's just, it's pretty. You could do it on stage. It's just him on the one set, and then another person comes in. But
right, Shakespearean. It's like all soliloquy practically.
Shakespeare had tons more cast compared to this. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's a gorgeous place you got here, Jackie.
Well, $4 a night, you can't go wrong, you know. $4 a night.
No, you can't go wrong, but you could get roasted to death or poisoned by small creatures.
What about tonight, George? What's the job?
Well, what would you like to do, Jackie? What's your heart's desire?
Are you kidding me, George? You're pulling my leg, I know you. You're pulling my leg. Well, if it was up to me, well, if it was up to me, George, I'd like some decent odds for a change. I don't mind a little shakedown, a little bunco, but it's just that I'm getting all the hard stuff. You almost got picked up the last 2 times.
Anybody ever tell you what you look like? You look like a man trying to catch a subway at 5 o'clock. You always look like somebody squeezing you through a door. What do you do to sleep at night, Jackie? Hide in the locked closet?
Now, look, George, I'm not knocking you, and I don't see why you all the time gotta knock me. All I'm asking from you is...
Well, all right, I tell you, Jackie. Tonight I'm gonna let you be a man. I'm gonna let you show some muscle for a change.
He's like there. He's like doing this to be or not to be. What are you gonna do, Jackie? You're gonna be, you're gonna not be. This guy, Jackie's boss, his name is George, is a real, like, hardcore professional slime ball. I mean, he is everything you hate in an independent businessman, you know, but he's got a winning smile, though, and I'll be the first to admit that. There were similar episodes to this. There was a Mickey Rooney episode from season 5 where he's basically talking to himself, but he becomes really big or something, and something happens, supernatural happens to him. It's called The Last Night of a Jockey. He's like a horse jockey that fell into corruption, lost his job, and suddenly he gets too big for the room. So the bed is like really small, the chair's really small. And then there was another one, the Theodore Bickel episode from season 4 called 4 O'Clock. That's the one where he turns into like a little thing. He's like 2 feet tall, and he's got this parrot or whatever. And so what you have is just it's a buildup of just crazy people getting crazier because I surmise they're enslaved by their desires and their lack of initiative and their lust for power.
I don't know if this guy had a lust for power. He kind of had the opposite of that. He's been asked to do a job that he clearly doesn't want to do.
Right. He's supposed to go out and he's supposed to whack somebody.
He's supposed to kill a bartender, right?
Yeah. But he's not a contract killer. He's more of a bag man. Right?
Yeah, so this is apparently a little above and beyond the scope of his usual duties.
So what is he doing? He's having an attack of conscience or something like that, right? There isn't much to this. It's just it's basically just him talking to himself because the reflection of him in the mirror becomes alive and starts arguing with him.
Right.
Yeah, now I get it. I'm talking to myself. That's just who you are talking to. Part of yourself, the part you never let come out. Now listen, buddy. You got no invitation to come out now. So you can go right back where you came from. Who needs you? You do. You've always needed me. You're a chicken, too. You're scared I'll get caught, same as me. You're scared this is the last job. So you make a big noise like a conscience so the big man don't say you've been goofing off all my life. It means more than that to me, Jackie. You think I can keep quiet now while you go out and get us both killed? You never got away with nothing, and you know you won't get away with this. And I got a right to live.
Because the reflection in the mirror is, I think, the person that he wishes that he were.
Something happens here as the argument continues and it becomes more intense and we fade out. Jackie passes out, and sometimes past after that, it's up for debate as to what truly happened. Suddenly Jackie has confidence, right? This George comes in. He informs him the bartender's still alive and that Jackie didn't do his job. And Jackie wallops George, tells him to get packing, calls up the hotel manager, tells him he's moving out. So what I wanted to get into was who won the struggle. Okay.
I didn't think it was up for debate at all. To me, it was clear what happened. The mirror guy and him, the not in the mirror guy, switch places.
So what is that, though? What are we looking at here? Are we looking at an aspect of Jackie's personality? A formerly, stuck in the mirror was the brave part of him. Maybe his id, if you will?
Maybe, if I will.
Suddenly took control of the personality. Became the dominant part, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, well, to me it's like something you wish would happen. It's like the best part of him, or the part that he preferred, or the part that he hoped was in it, the part that he hoped was in him, took over just in that few minutes, instead of it being more of a lifelong struggle that it might be for other people. So that part of him took over, and he slugged the criminal.
Sort of, okay, they made a joke once on Family Guy about an old movie that they were watching called Fast Talking High Trousers, and he was throughout the whole thing he was wired. He was like he was on drugs. It was like he got the boost. He was talking about the smashing of Palooka's chops. He was like doing all this kind of weird, Jimmy Cagney kind of stuff.
Right.
Is that Jimmy Cagney was always the? Well, no, actually not Jimmy Cagney. I'm thinking more Elijah Cook. Elijah Cook always played the stoolie or the toady guy in a mafia movie or something. He was always the rat. He was always the sniveling rat.
Oh, okay.
He was like the lower echelon of the mob.
So that's this guy.
But the thing is, okay, now doesn't it seem like George might come back with a bit of a chip on his shoulder? Maybe try to put two behind Jackie's ear?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't think about that. I think he stood up to him, and so he probably won't do that because he knows he doesn't have him to push around anymore.
But he's such a small little man, Jackie. He's a tiny little guy.
Does size always matter?
Yes, it does. Especially when you're dealing with a mob.
I think
so. You were right, actually. Well, I guess it's sort of in my notes here that his mirror image wins this battle. Because he is a different man in the end.
Well, that's what I got out of it when I was watching it. They didn't really...
So what do you think? I mean, for me, it was kind of a minor diversion, and I thought it was a little too long, really. I think we got the gist of it in the first 5 minutes.
What it is. Well, there's a story he was telling about how he was going to get married to someone, but then he was in jail, and by the time he got out, it was too late. So it was a little...
I must have missed that,
because the woman he wanted to marry married someone else because he was screwing around in jail, and I think he felt like he was going to be missing all these opportunities, so... The brave guy was arguing. The brave side of himself was arguing with him, like he had to make these changes, or he was going to be stuck this way for the rest of his life. Right. I mean, don't you wish that would?
The problem, I think, my main problem, other than that this is really a bit overlong and was just it told its story in about 5 minutes, was that I felt the actor wasn't terribly sympathetic. I thought that he was a sniveling rat. I feel like he had no honor. He had no personal honor in him. Maybe the mirror reflection did, but for the most part, we're paying attention to the guy outside of it. So I was thinking, if you had an actor like a Jack Klugman playing that part, it would be awesome.
Somebody who was a little bit more, inspires a little more sympathy from the audience.
And Jack Klugman, he played a part like that, very similar part to that in Season 5 episode called In Praise of Pip, where he does play kind of a bagman for a mafia guy or something. But yeah, I felt that he needed to, make me feel sorry for this guy. He just comes off like a punk to me. And also, what is he, 34? They say he's 34. Another case of just these people
and
just...
he looks 50.
Destroying themselves, yes. He looks like he's 54.
Well, people age differently now. It's not really fair to say that. But I do know what you mean. I wasn't that invested, and I think part of it was the actor not really compelling me to care too much about it.
I don't think he was given much to work with. It was, what was it, a Serling script? I think he just sort of dashed it off very quick, a cheap episode so they can save up for the next episode that we're now going to talk about, which is also kind of an isolated story, but there's a lot more stuff happening in it.
More stuff happening, but not a lot more people now that I think about it.
Not that many people with speaking parts, anyway.
Right.
But I think all the money that they saved on Nervous Man in a $4 Room, they spent on all the stunts and all the crazy work they did in this episode, A Thing About Machines. Starring Richard Hayden as Bartlett Finchley. It's a hell of a name. And in the second of 4 appearances on Twilight Zone, Barney Phillips as the TV repairman. Richard Hayden, you might remember as the old man who brings the last will and testament of Baron Beaufort von Frankenstein to Gene Wilder in the movie Young Frankenstein. Now, I had a question for you yesterday when we were watching this episode. Remember when if your electronics broke down, you'd get a repairman instead of just replacing a cheap but overpriced piece of crap?
Do I remember that? I do not.
I do.
We're the same age. I think maybe I can remember a time where you would take your appliances to the repair shop, but I don't really remember having a visiting repairman for the most part. The cat is participating in the podcast. Are you hearing this back here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
She always, which one? Siren or Little?
I don't know. Whoever's scratching at the furniture.
That could be either of them. I'll kill them later. But, my mother...
Your mother.
My mother bought an RCA, a 19-inch RCA selective color track. It was called Color Track, color television set, and it cost her $900. Okay, and this was in the 70s, I believe that she bought it.
Holy cow, that's a lot of money in the 70s.
Well, yes, that's how much televisions cost. And it was built like a tank, okay? And if it broke...
Probably weighed about as much of a tank, too, right?
You paid a repairman to fix it because you spent a lot of money on that.
They came to the house and repaired it?
Yes, I believe they did.
Wow.
He actually came, he had a tube and everything, he fixed it.
He had a tube, wow.
You know what happened? I spilled chocolate milk on it. That's why it broke. The tube burnt out or something.
I'm surprised your mother didn't kill you for that.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't quite know what happened.
TVs used to have tubes.
But she had to save up to get the repairman because even though the repairs did not cost the amount of the television, which in that case she would throw it in the junk, it did cost quite a bit, so she had to save money. So for like an entire summer, all we had was a little 12-inch black and white TV that we watched. That's all we had in the house. So when we finally got that thing fixed, it was just wonderful because it was color television, which is a big deal. It was a big deal back then. I mean, even back in the 70s, early 80s, not everyone had a color TV. They started becoming really cheaper. So all the equipment got cheaper and cheaper, and now that things break, you just throw them out because it's cheaper to just replace them than to have somebody fix them.
I don't like that. That's very wasteful.
It is, extremely, and in these days of recycling that we hear so much about. So... this episode, I wrote here, is just pure catharsis. It's just an unusual revenge fantasy. It was written by Serling and directed by David Orrick McDearman. Finchley he's just an unpleasant douche. He's frightened. He hates machines. He's scared to death of them, right? And he even tries to court his secretary to get her to stay with him because he's scared to death of everything. I was get out of the house, obviously, if you feel that way.
I wish you'd stay for a bit. Oh, I don't mean for work or anything. All that can wait. I was just thinking that we could have dinner or something. A theater, perhaps.
How very sweet, Mr. Finchley. Thank you. But no, thank you. Goodbye, Mr. Finchley.
Before you go, Miss Rogers, before you go.
Yes?
I'd like very much not to be alone for a while.
Are you ill? Bad news or something?
No.
What's your trouble?
Does there have to be trouble just because I'm desperately tired. I haven't slept for 4 nights. Quite frankly, the thought of being alone just now is intolerable, Miss Rogers. Things have been happening. Very odd things.
Go on.
That television machine in there. It goes on late at night and wakes me up. Just goes on all by itself. That radio I kept in the bedroom, that went on and off too. Just when I was going to sleep. There's a conspiracy in this house, Miss Rogers.
Conspiracy?
That's exactly what it is, a conspiracy. The television set, the radio, the clock. Even that miserable car I drive.
But this is a problem. This is a logical problem here. The secretary is played by Barbara Stewart. She was Sergeant Carter's girlfriend on Gomer Pyle. But where I remember her is as Captain Kramer's wife in Airplane, with the scene where the dog is attacking the guy. The dog will not let the guy go. Well, he's going there to pick up Robert Stack. And this dog is jumping all over him. And Robert Stack walks through the mirror, which is unusual, too.
Hello, I'm Paul Perry from the airline. I'm here to pick up Captain Kramer.
Oh, yes. Come in, Paul. Rex will be right out. Sit. So I understand you have a real emergency down there.
Yeah, something like that. But as I say, they didn't have time to tell me very much.
Chef, no. I'll bet you have exciting things happen all the time down there.
Well, the airline business does have its moments, but after a while, you again get used to it.
Chip, come. He gets so excited when new people are here. Are you a pilot yourself?
No, I'm in a training program.
But the logical gap, I thought, that if Finchley hates machines, why does he have so many machines in his house? He has, instead of a straight razor or a safety razor, he has an electric shaver. Instead of a manual typewriter, he has an electric typewriter, which was a big deal back in like the early 60s. Electric typewriters were not in most people's homes. Why does he have a television? We know the answers, of course. If he didn't have all those machines, they wouldn't turn on him and attack him, right?
Right. A better question, though, is why is he so nasty? I mean, though his secretary, he's incredibly mean to her, and then he, like, asks her to stay. I mean, why would she do that? You can't... I mean, like, we were talking about the other episode with the guy being unsympathetic, but this guy, he's obviously set up not to be liked.
Yeah, he's written to be unsympathetic.
Right. So they did a good job there. That was very effective.
Well, he was playing on his secretary's sympathy.
But how is she going to have
any
sympathy? Right. Well, yeah.
All right, this episode...
it didn't make any sense at all.
It reminds me of the 1986 Stephen King horror film Maximum Overdrive.
Yeah, it's Maximum Overdrive. It would be an expansion of this idea.
Limited character piece. It's just mostly stunt work, a lot of spectacular effects, and some of them are kind of dumb too, like the electric shaver. It starts floating up in the air, and you can pretty much see that there's a string attached to it. But he's being like chased around his house by all this stuff. The typewriter types out a message. There's a funny bit on the television with some kind of a belly dancer. You said she was a flamenco dancer.
I was just guessing. I have no expertise.
Why don't you get out of here, Finchley?
I don't know. Okay, you know what this? Watching it. Okay, it's not like I'm making the connection right away watching it, but it reminds me so much of something Terry Gilliam would do. He would do something like this. He would do an unusual cathartic piece about machines turning on man in an intellectual way, not in a violent, bloody, graphic way like Stephen King did. The way Stephen King did it, it was just sort of, it happened. It happened as a result of a comment or something. But Terry Gilliam, I mean, like, remember Brazil? In Brazil, where basically, I know what he was talking about when he was doing, like, Brazil. He was talking about the bureaucracy, the machinery of bureaucracy destroying man. But there is a scene where, I believe, Jonathan Pryce is being attacked by his air conditioning. All the tubes in the wall come out, and they...
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. That's what I remember. All the tubes are falling apart and getting in everybody's way and twisting everybody up.
But I was thinking if he wanted to do it as catharsis, but in an intellectual way, it would be like Terry Gilliam, and that sort of this sort of reminded me of that. And then we kind of go into John Carpenter territory. He finally runs out of the house, and he's being chased down the street by his car. So it's very much like Christine now,
right?
And that's what leads to his demise. but it because it has like a sardonic edge to it, there seems to be no purpose to any of this. It's nihilistic, because I see no reason. Even if you're making a comment, like some kind of commentary, machines are supposed to be thoughtless, perhaps cold, logical tools created for our manipulation. So, but I don't get it. What did we learn?
And I'm not really sure. I don't know if it was just because of the way it was written, but what came first? Did he hate the machines first, and then they attacked him, or did he sense whatever attacks were coming from, whatever violence was coming from the machines first, and then he became paranoid and started to hate them? I wasn't sure about that. I mean, he was already obviously an extremely unpleasant man. Is it like he was so unpleasant that even the machines turned on him because all the other people had already turned him down?
Nobody seems to like him anyway.
Right.
The TV repairman thinks he's funny. That's what I thought was interesting. The secretary did not like him.
I thought the TV repairman was tolerating him because he had to.
Well, he gives him a lot of business, number one.
Right.
But number two, I think I think the TV repairman, Barney Phillips there, just sort of sat back and laughed at this guy for being kind of, afraid and destructive when it came to the machines.
And then he called all these women on the phone trying to get someone to come and keep him company because he's totally freaked out.
He looks like he has a lot of money, and I'm not quite sure what he does. I believe he's some kind of a critic or something.
It was his house, right? It was this big, beautiful mansion, and he had a pool in the back,
kind of over-decorated, too.
Yeah. He was kind of over-decorated.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything about that, but he seems to be slightly festive, which I think accounts for the dubious look on his secretary's face when he's trying to ask her out. But I digress. So what did we learn? What did we learn today, Jim? Not to steal. No, that was yesterday.
I think we learned not to be filled with hate because if you do, your razor will chase after you.
That's the razor, yeah. Okay, I also wanted to mention the very clever Rod Serling introduction on which is on Finchley's television screen. So, could this be deeper than I'm giving it any credit for, or is this like a meta reference, putting him on the television?
I don't know, man, but the picture was amazing.
That was high def back in 1960, I believe. This is the end of the year 60, I believe this episode premiered. Let me just double check on that one. No, actually, Thing About Machines premiered October 28th, 1960. It
was definitely entertaining, but as you said, I don't exactly know what the point of it was.
Again, it's very similar. It's my feeling about it is the same I had for Nervous Man. Kind of told the story in 5 minutes. But what you have is they kind of took the 5 minutes and expanded it. So you had like, I guess, 3 sections. The first 10 minutes of the episode had all the dialogue, and then after that there was no dialogue. It was just him dealing with all the machines, which I thought was interesting as well. But again, the story,
tormented and traumatized.
Right. Again, the story could have been told in a shorter time. It's just sort of an anecdote. It's like an anecdote, sort of like Nervous Man. Okay. Next time I will be discussing The Howling Man and Eye of the Beholder with the great Colin Hall. Thanks for tuning in, and please try to remember to be nice to your machines. Treat them kindly and with respect, or else they will kill you. Good night.